So let me tell you the story. Are you guys up for one more story? I don't want to bore you with stories because I can get into more detail. But let me know. Are you up for one more story? Say no if you're not. It's not, doesn't sweat. I don't find it a problem. All right, so I'll tell you the story of how Subtools came about, and that's important. And it's an important story. Number one, because it's true, and two, because it sets up the parameters for things. So there's a dragon movie. I'm not going to say which one, but there's a dragon movie being made, and it's full of lots of dragons. And there are these storyboards with this dragon, you know, really far off in space, and then getting closer and closer until you get to the point where, in fact, we should draw it this way, where the dragon runs right over the camera. And you get to the point where you're actually seeing the scales on his belly. So Chris was working this job, and he calls us, right? He's like, okay, guys, I really got to do this. I need to prove to my people that ZBrush is the bomb and that we can accomplish this. Because this was back in the day when, instead of sculpting inside of ZBrush, companies would use textures. So Rhythm and Hues, for example, they never adopted ZBrush on a major level back in my time at Pixologic, because they had a whole texture team. And they were great at what they did. And ZBrush was competitive with that. But, you know, they did what they needed to do. So you can do this with textures or you can do this with sculpt. But here's the problem. This is 4K by, let's say 3K, sorry. I don't mean to simplify too much. 3K by 4K resolution. Anybody know how many pixels are in a 3K by 4K resolution? I'm going to pull up my calculator, see if I remember. I'm going to just say 3096 times, no, sorry. Oh, that's cool. So 3076 times 40, well, we're going to get there anyways. How many, Michael? 12 million. So if we draw this, 3K, 4K, 12 million pixels. That's a key number to keep in mind, because this is part of topology and part of production. How many polygons does your model need to be? Well, that depends. If your model is this little tiny model in the background and he never gets close to screen, well, you know, that's what? How many out of 12 million is that going to be? You need 1 million. You need a couple million. That's easy. What if he is right here and his face is in there and he's doing something and he's got a hand on over the side? And now just that part of his body needs to be 12 million or 8 million pixels of resolution. So now you imagine you have a dragon who's got this really long neck, and he's got these wings, these little tiny arms, and these crazy legs. And now what we end up seeing is that this little tiny portion of him needs to be 12 million polygons. How do you make that guy 12 million polygons? For that tiny portion of him. My first suggestion is fire the director. Okay? And then you hunt down the storyboard artist who is now torturing your life, and you make him change the storyboards. You beg him to change the storyboards because that's insane. But that's what was happening, and that's what happens. You know, I mean, you don't tell a director, you know, sorry, can't do that. You say, yes, sir. All right, how do we do that? You know, that's the polite way. And you figure out how to do that. Always bigger, always better. That's the key. Well, how are you going to do that inside of ZBrush? Even if you were to, say, take the head, let's say you take the neck. So the head becomes 5 million. The neck is 5 million. This wing is 5 million. This is 5 million. And then you divide the body, and the leg is 5 million. This is 5 million. Or let's say you have a crazy system, 64 bits. You've got 20 gigs of RAM. You've got 25 core processor. You know, you got quantum computing going on. You know, you can get maybe 50 million, let's say, in each one of these guys. More. But even then, you're going to run into these problems. It's going to be really hard to get to 12 million with the current state of hardware as it is. But what we were trying to do then, and the way that Subtools came about is, all right, we know 12 million is going to be hard for that section, but we can do something. And we did. But the problem, and this happened with the film Pirates of the, well, with a pirate film. There's a, how do you work, I have to navigate NDAs left, right, and center. Let's just ignore that one, and let's stay with the dragon story. It'd be safer for me. So if you've cut the neck off and it's a dragon, what do dragons have? Scales. What are scales? They're patterns. How easy is it to tell when a pattern has been interrupted? Very. So if you've got all these scales and they get interrupted and they have a line going through them, our eyes are trained to pick that up very fast. So Subtools allows Chris to get more polygons so that he can break the head up and break the body up and break the wings up. But now he has to battle with seams. And so the next innovation came along, which still hasn't reached its conclusion yet, but it's getting there, and that's HD geometry. So I'm going to clear the screen here so I can show you HD geometry. The next big innovation, where did it go? Is going to be, not the next, but one of them is going to be HD geometry. HD geometry allows your model to get up to 1 billion, yes, you heard that right, 1 billion polygons. It's a little hard to get them out, but you can. And the tools are written for you to export normal maps and displacements, and they're getting better, but they're not 100% just yet. Anyways, if we look at that dragon, that long neck and the wings and the legs, this 12 million multiplied all over, that might be 1 billion. So because Chris came to us with this problem, I have to show them ZBrush can do this. Subtools came about, and Geometry HD came about because we were trying to push the polygon limit. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason, because remember, we're dealing with some amazing developers. They probably had this in the back of their mind for a long time, and this was the excuse to do it. But this was the excuse. How do you increase the amount of polygons? And Subtools and Geometry HD were developed together. And as Matthew's asking, yes, how do you delete HG? Because, you know, there's issues with it. Check with Nate, but its purpose is to increase your polygon count. Any questions about that? Oh, by the way, ILM ended up doing the work for this film, and they did not use ZBrush for the dragons at the end of the day. They used texture mapping, because attaching that many texture maps is not a real-time problem. It's just a problem, and then you throw a render farm at it. So, and that's what they did. Just one scene would take forever to render. One frame, sorry. Any questions? Give me a shout out. Yes, no. All right, so let's talk about that. I'm going to reiterate that primary purpose, and it's useful to show the primary purpose of a multiplier in terms of, my head got tweaked, in terms of this kind of face, because this face has 3.2 million polygons. That's what I can comfortably sculpt. I have no problems. So that's 3.2. And then this one clump of hair is 1.6 million polygons. So 1.6, 3.2. Together, that's what? 4.8. They could be the same model, but everybody's system is different. When the difference between 3 million to 5 million in some people's system can be quite big. As soon as you get over 3 million, things can start to slow down, and just going to 4 million is enough to start to just shut your system off. So even though this is fine, the hair is such a different piece, and I really wanted to make sure I could get more, because for example, I still need more. You see the chattering in here? I need to divide this one more time, but how many polygons is 1.6 going to turn into? If I divide this one more time, how many does it turn into? $3.2? Is that right, guys? Remember, it's a multiplier of 4. So, Steve, Aaron, Matthew, you guys are in the ballpark. Steve, you're dead on. It's 6.4. Going from 1.6 to 6.4, that's a pretty big difference. That's a really, really, really big difference. So your system needs to be able to handle that. Mine can handle it, but now suddenly all my file sizes are going to start to be much larger. And if I'm still iterating through basic things, I don't really want to do that, because now suddenly I'm going to have 2 gigabyte files. And in fact, this file is 1.8 gigabytes. Okay, Control N to clear my screen. Let me turn solo mode off. So this is the primary use. Let's look at how you do that yourself. And then we're heading towards the end of this.